Sometimes the forest comes to you. These aren't legends passed down through generations or stories told around a campfire. These are real experiences, told firsthand by those who lived them. From shadowy figures peering through windows to unseen creatures shaking homes and stealing food, these encounters happened in quiet towns, deep forests, and lonely highways. The people who witnessed them never expected to come face to face with the unknown, but they did, and now they're ready to tell their stories. It was the first week of May 1983. I was 30 years old at the time, a student in Albuquerque, studying machine drafting at the Southwest Indian Polytechnic Institute. A group of us had gone camping as part of a school activity, alcohol-free and pretty relaxed, up in the Santa Fe National Forest about 7 miles outside the town of Cuba, New Mexico. We were camped fairly high in the mountains, tucked deep in the forest. Our student advisor, Mr. Ray Pediamo from the Pueblo of Acoma, was with us. That night, I went to bed alone in my tent. Everything was quiet until around 4 a.m. when something woke me up. It wasn't a sound, it was a smell. A horrible, overwhelming stench, so strong it actually burned my nostrils. I'd never smelled anything like it. Still half asleep, I sat up in my sleeping bag, and that's when I saw it. A massive, hairy arm, light brown in color, reached into my tent through the front flap and started feeling around, slowly, deliberately, like it was searching for something. I froze. I started hyperventilating, completely horrified. The size of that arm, it clearly wasn't human. Just when I was about to scream, the arm pulled back and disappeared. That's when I realized there was more than one. I could hear 2 distinct voices outside my tent, one deeper, probably male, and the other higher, maybe female. I couldn't make out words, but I knew they were communicating. Through the thin material of the tent, and a dim light from a nearby post, I could see their silhouettes. 2 huge figures, both easily around 8 feet tall. Suddenly, they both let out loud, wild yells and took off running, their footsteps thudding as they disappeared into the forest. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. When the sun came up, I joined everyone at breakfast. But I didn't tell a soul. Nobody else said they'd heard or seen anything, and I didn't want to be the only one talking about it. I didn't share this story with anyone until more than 20 years later. And to this day, I've never been back to that spot. In fall of 1998, I was getting ready for my annual elk hunt in Rio Arriba County, near Tierra Amarilla, New Mexico. Just a few days before the trip, I was in my garage, loading some clothes onto a shelf to donate to charity. As I leaned over my ATV, I wrenched my back. Bad. It was the worst pain I'd ever felt. After about a day and a half of bed rest, I was still hurting, but I didn't want to miss the trip. So, I sucked it up and made the 3-hour drive to our usual hunting area with my brother and cousin. We unloaded our 3 ATVs and got ready to head out. Honestly, I shouldn't have done it. The lifting only made my back worse. That night, we all sacked out. At 5 a.m., we headed into the forest. My brother and I planned to hunt along a fence line that had been productive in the past. Because I was still in so much pain, he suggested I just stay in one spot and rest. I found a small clearing with some good sight lines and settled in. The morning was clear but cold, and soon the chill made my back stiffen even more. I was shivering and barely able to move. I decided to crawl to a sunnier spot, just about 50 yards away, and leaned up against a short tree stump. The sun helped a bit. I was still in pain, but at least the shivers stopped. That's when things got weird. At around 9 a.m., I started hearing rustling, what I thought were squirrels running through the nearby pine trees. I didn't think much of it at first. I was more focused on the pain. But then, something hit a tree, a rock. A big one, about the size of a softball, came bouncing out of the trees and smacked into a trunk not far from me. I froze. Then another rock came, and another. They weren't falling from above, they were being thrown, hard. At first I tried to come up with a logical explanation. Maybe another hunter trying to flush out elk? But no. The rocks were too big and they kept coming. One every minute or so. No human could keep that up for an hour. That's when it hit me. Stories I'd read about Sasquatch throwing rocks. And in my condition, I knew I couldn't run. Couldn't even defend myself. I radioed my brother. He was about 500 or 600 yards away. When he showed up, the rocks were still flying, landing just a few yards from where we were crouched. We both saw them with our own eyes, flying in from the trees at least 8 feet high, hitting with real force. There was no sound, no movement, just complete silence, except for the thuds of stone against bark and dirt. The throwing went on for another 30 minutes before finally stopping. We tried to approach the area where we thought the rocks had come from, but the ground was rocky and we couldn't find any tracks or signs. To this day, I still think about it. Whatever was throwing those rocks, it wasn't a person. It wasn't a bear. It was something else entirely. It was December 2004, early in the morning, around 3:30 a.m. I was out working near a water pit between Bloomfield and Dulce, New Mexico, just off Highway 64. I'm a water hauler. That night was bitter cold, and I had my truck's work lights on, lighting up the area while I did my job. Everything was normal, until I caught a horrible smell. I figured it was a dead animal somewhere nearby. But then, I saw something. In the moonlight, just outside the glow of my work lights, something huge was moving. It was on 2 legs, circling my truck, fast, but it never came close to the light. It seemed almost afraid of it. I stood there, frozen, watching. It never made a sound, just kept its distance, staying just beyond where I could see clearly. I didn't tell anyone, not right away, but later I mentioned it to a coworker. That's when things got creepier. He told me that he'd seen something too, a month earlier. Something on 2 legs, chasing his truck near the same area. He got a better look than I did. Said it had a face, like a monkey. Then in February he called me, completely terrified, said it had come back. This time it was standing right next to his driver's door, just standing there. I've never heard someone that scared over the phone before, and we haven't seen or heard about it since. It was the summer of 1976, and I was camping with my family near Chama, New Mexico, in the Rio Chama Valley, not far from the Colorado border. We were staying at a small, quiet campground surrounded by pine trees and hills, typical of the northern New Mexico wilderness. I was just a kid then, around 10 years old. It was early evening. The sun had dipped low, but there was still enough light to see clearly. I wandered off a little ways from our campsite, just exploring like kids do, when I suddenly heard a noise. Heavy footsteps, fast, powerful, like something running on 2 legs, pounding the ground with incredible weight. I looked up, and that's when I saw it. A huge figure, easily 8 feet tall, covered in dark brown hair, ran across a ridge about 40 yards away from me. It was moving fast and upright. Whatever it wasn't a bear. I could see its long arms swinging, and its stride was enormous. It didn't seem to notice me, or if it did, it didn't care. It was moving with purpose, crashing through the trees, heading downhill toward the creek that ran near the campground. I ran back to my family, heart pounding out of my chest. I told them what I saw, but you know how adults are. They brushed it off, said maybe it was a deer, or even a man in a costume. But I know what I saw. That wasn't a man. That wasn't any animal I've ever seen in New Mexico or anywhere else. This happened back in October of 1993, on a stretch of land near Tres Piedras, New Mexico. I was helping a friend who owned a remote property out there, a quiet place surrounded by forest and rocky terrain. We'd been doing some work on the house during the day. That night, after dinner, I stepped outside to smoke a cigarette. It was cold and clear. The moon was out, and everything felt still, real quiet. That's when I felt it, like something was watching me. It hit me all at once, this uneasy feeling like eyes on the back of my neck. I scanned the trees and the edge of the brush, and that's when I saw it. Just inside the tree line, about 40 or 50 feet away, a tall, dark figure, standing perfectly still. It was massive, at least 7 or 8 feet tall, broad shoulders, covered in hair. It wasn't moving, just watching me from the shadows. I froze. Every hair on my body stood up. I took a step back, then another, and then it turned, quietly, like it knew I had seen it. It turned and walked back into the trees. No sound, no growl, just gone. I didn't sleep much that night, and I never went back to that property alone again. Encounter 6, Highway Shadow, late fall 1989, Highway 285 near Ojo Caliente, New Mexico. It was late fall of 1989, sometime in November. I was driving home along Highway 285, headed south toward Ojo Caliente, New Mexico. It was late, around 10:30 or 11 p.m., and the road was pretty much empty. That stretch of highway runs through some desolate, open terrain, sagebrush, low hills, not much out there, just darkness and road. I was cruising along, headlights on high beam, when something suddenly stepped into the road. At first I thought it was a man, tall, really tall, but as my headlights hit it, I realized it was covered in hair, head to toe. Its arms were long and hung low, and it moved with a kind of weight and stride I've never seen in a human. It turned toward the light for just a second, eyes glowing faintly, then took 2 quick steps and vanished into the brush on the other side of the road. I slammed on the brakes, heart pounding. I sat there for a minute, headlights shining into the dark, trying to figure out what I'd just seen. There was no one else around. No cars, no animals, just silence. I kept driving, but slower. I didn't tell anyone for years. Who would believe it? But I know what I saw on that road that night, and it still gives me chills every time I drive that stretch. Encounter 7, Bigfoot in the Pines, a night on the Mescalero Reservation. Witness account June 2000, Otero County, New Mexico. It was the summer of 2000, sometime in June. I remember the nights were warm but still carried that high mountain chill once the sun went down. Our home sits nestled between Mescalero and Ruidoso, right on the Mescalero Apache Reservation, where pine trees rise like watchful sentinels and shadows stretch long and deep. I've never forgotten what I saw that night. It all started with the dogs. They were going wild, barking, howling, yelping like something was deeply wrong. That night, my mom was the first to hear it. She got up, thinking maybe the kids upstairs were stirring, but on her way back down, she stopped by the window and glanced out. There, in the pale glow of the moon and the weak beam of the streetlight, she saw something. She couldn't see it clearly at first. Trees were in the way, but the window was open, and through it, she could hear something moving. It let out these deep, guttural grunts, not like any animal we knew. Heavy, almost human. The dogs all around the neighborhood were barking and crying. Something was out there. What chilled me even more was that just a week before, my aunt, who lives next door, was woken by the same thing. The dogs again. She looked out her own upstairs window and saw the figure vanish into the tree line behind her house. It moved fast, and it moved with purpose. Then, a few weeks later, it was my turn. I woke up around 3 a.m. for no real reason. Maybe I sensed something. My bed faces the window, so when I sat up, I had a direct view of the road below. My room's on the 2nd floor, and the window was cracked open. That's when I smelled it first. The odor hit me like a wave. Foul, heavy, like something rotting in the sun. I gagged, and then I saw it. It was walking slowly up the road, just on the edge of an orange streetlight. It had to be at least 7 or 8 feet tall, maybe more. Its body was dark and covered in something. Hair or fur, I couldn't tell. Its head sloped slightly backward into a pointed shape. It was hunched, with long arms that swung naturally, almost too naturally. It didn't shuffle like a bear or stalk like a cat. It walked like it belonged there. I froze. I couldn't move. Once it disappeared past the trees, I scrambled downstairs and shook my mom awake. She came upstairs with me and sat beside me on the bed. We were both staring out the window, barely speaking, just listening to the dogs lose their minds again. Then we saw it. Its shape through the trees, down in the ditch beside the road. It was crouched, playing with something, maybe a can. The sound of metal scraping echoed faintly up to us. We didn't dare move, we just watched. Over time we heard other stories. A woman saw it peering into her window. A man swore it chased him one night. My uncle caught it rummaging through a neighbor's trash. People here have seen it walk across the road, vanish into the trees. But not everyone talks about it. Maybe they're scared people will think they're crazy. I know I was, but once you see it, you don't forget. Our neighborhood's still pretty new, just 10 or 15 years old, but it's surrounded by wilderness, pines, mountains, canyons. It feels like a place where something ancient still roams. Something watching, waiting. And I know what I saw. Encounter 8, The Thing at the Window, July 2004. Mescalero, New Mexico. This happened in late July of 2004, around 11 p.m., in the town of Mescalero, New Mexico, in Otero County. The area where we were living is on a hill just above Highway 70, surrounded by trees, brush, and deep canyons. There's a lot of forest here, and the houses are spaced out, quiet, rural land. I was at my mother-in-law's house, hanging out with my girlfriend and some of her family. That night, we were all just relaxing when my sister-in-law came running in from outside, panicked. She said she'd seen something very tall walking back and forth on the trail below the house. She and her friends had been sitting outside when this thing came up out of the woods and just stood at the corner of the house, watching them. That was enough to send everyone inside fast. Me and my girlfriend stayed in the living room to watch TV. The others went back to one of the bedrooms, trying to calm down. That's when we heard something. It came from the dining room, a strange noise, like someone moving stuff around. I asked, "What was that?" She said, "I don't know," so I jumped up to check. A couple of the girls came out too, wondering what was going on. We walked into the dining room, and that's when I saw it. There was a large hand, reaching through the open window. It stretched across the table and grabbed a bowl of food we had sitting there, then just pulled it right out the window. That hand wasn't human. It was too big, too rough-looking. We all froze for a second, just staring, then panic kicked in. I called the conservation office, but by the time they could do anything, it was long gone. Whatever it was, it had been bold enough to come right up to the house. And this wasn't the first time. Something has been hanging around Mescalero for the past 2 or 3 years. We've all had weird experiences, too many to ignore. About 2 years before that, my brother-in-law was walking home from a friend's place around midnight. He saw something standing in the road, about 150 yards away. He got scared and ran home. When he reached the door, he started pounding to be let in. He didn't realize it had followed him, until he turned around and saw it. It was standing just 10 feet behind him, watching him silently in the dark. When they opened the door, he ran inside. It stood there for another few minutes, then disappeared into the trees. A year after that, there was another incident, early in the morning, after a snowfall. My mother-in-law had gone out to gather laundry from the clothesline. She saw 2 sets of tracks in the snow, one very large, the other smaller, like maybe it had a young one with it. The tracks went between the house and the line. A few pieces of clothing had been pulled off and were lying on the ground. Then the prints led down into the trees. Now I live in a trailer up the highway. The nearest house is about a mile away. One night I was lying in bed with my girlfriend. No power, no dogs, just darkness and quiet. Then we heard a sound. It was like the whole side of the trailer had been hit, hard, like something bumped it with a car. It was only once, but it shook the place. I believe it was Bigfoot. We've heard screams coming from the next canyon over, loud and echoing through the trees. This thing, whatever it is, it's still out there. Some things don't need an invitation. They come right up to your window. Which of these new encounters left you watching the tree line a little closer? Drop a comment and let us know your thoughts. And don't forget, if you've got a story, I'd love to hear it. Need more? There are plenty of these sightings, and we're just getting started.